Bonjour, Nathalie here. Welcome to FrancoFoods. It's Mardi Gras, y'all. Time to celebrate. Along with the masks and bead necklaces, nothing says Mardi Gras like a good old king cake. A sweet treat with a surprise inside. Some of you might have noticed the small baby on top of the flower. Let's see where he pops up. I have the pleasure of knowing a lovely gentleman from New Orleans, Scott Tilton, who graciously shared with me his Aunt Chachi's recipe for king cake from her cookbook, New Orleans Home Cooking. The recipe and steps are in the description. To start, I'm waking up the yeast by dissolving it in warm water with some sugar. Make sure you read the side of the yeast container to confirm the water's temperature. If the water's too hot, it will kill the yeast. Okay, look at that. The yeast is already starting to bubble. This is gonna be good. While the yeast is doing its thing, I'm going to make the butter mixture. I've only had king cake a few times. This version of the king cake is a brioche-style enriched bread. I've never had it quite like this before, so I'm really looking forward to it. The other times, the king cake that I had was as a dessert, so it was a little bit different. Because I've never had this type before, I did ask Scott how he usually eats it, and he said it's usually a breakfast cake, and he'll have a nice slice with a cup of chicory coffee. I think that sounds rather nice. I don't want the mixture to boil, so I've turned off the burner because it's already hot enough that it's going to continue melting the butter and the sugar, and it'll ensure that it doesn't boil over. Look at that. The yeast is nice and frothy. Oh, definitely alive and well. So for those of you who might not know, Mardi Gras is the French term of Fat Tuesday. For those who follow this practice, Fat Tuesday is the last day to enjoy rich foods and drinks before they give them up for the Lenten period leading up to Easter. Oh no, I forgot to add the butter mixture before adding the flour. I did read the recipe several times, but obviously I needed to read it again and pay better attention. I hope I can save it. Maybe if I use a regular whisk to make sure that it's smooth. It looks like this is gonna work out okay after all. In her recipe, Ms. Dupuis shares that when she was a child, they would enjoy king cake in school every day during the Mardi Gras season, and that whoever would get the baby Jesus in their slice would bring the king cake for the next day. This started on January 6th, which is the day of Epiphany, until the actual day of Mardi Gras. When I've been to a Mardi Gras celebration, whoever would get the baby Jesus would be crowned the king or the queen of Mardi Gras. Either way, it's a fun tradition. On a side note, I have to admit, I'm really liking this Danish dough whisk. It was in a bread making kit my daughter gave me at Christmas. I'd never used it before, but I really like how I can mix this heavy, wet, sticky dough without getting my hands full of the dough. Definitely less waste, so I like that idea. Okay, time to knead. I love it. I can feel the warmth of the dough, and it smells great. Really nice and yeasty. So the recipe calls for 5 to 6 cups of flour. I've already mixed in 5 cups of flour, and now I'm kneading in the 6th cup a little bit at a time. Also, it says to knead for 8 to 10 minutes until smooth. If you saw the Zupf episode, you know that I learned my lesson. I'm definitely kneading this for at very least 8 minutes. Okay, note to self, take off bracelet before working with the dough. It's very annoying. The flour is nicely incorporated into the bread. It's less sticky, so that's really good. Okay, time for the first rise. Per Chachi's directives, I am covering the bowl with a damp cloth. Okay, I'll take a look in about 1 to 1.5 hours. Okay, I was afraid of that. The dough didn't rise much at all. It's not the yeast, I'm positive of that. But it is very cold here today in New Hampshire, and my kitchen is just not warm enough. Well, I'm going to keep trucking along and hope the second rise is better. Time to shape the cake. After some thought about it, I've decided to make one big king cake. So I'm stretching the dough into a 36-inch long roll. The tradition of serving a crown-shaped cake with a surprise inside to celebrate Epiphany started off in Europe. In France, for example, they served, and still do today, la galette des rois. The European immigrants brought that tradition with them, and as will happen with traditions, there was some changes, and the galette des rois became known as the king cake. At first, they'd put in something smaller like a pea or a bean that would be baked into the cake. In my house, my mom baked in a pea, and whoever got it would get a special present. With time, people became nervous that someone would choke on that small object, so they inserted something bigger like a whole nut, for example. But in the early 1900s, a baker in New Orleans put in a porcelain baby Jesus instead. New tradition was born. Now, it's a little plastic baby Jesus that gets the honor. Okay, onto a greased pan. Okay, time to hide the baby Jesus. Don't look. And time for the second rise. I have a new oven, and I keep forgetting that I actually have a proofing function on it. Never had that before. I'm feeling pretty confident that using that the second rising should be much improved. Okay, next time, maybe instead of putting the damp cloth, I think I'm gonna put the cling film instead. That way, less of a chance that the dough will stick to the cloth. But the ring is intact and it has doubled. Now, time to decorate the cake. Traditionally, you sprinkle bands of colored sugar, and the colors of Mardi Gras are purple, green, and gold. Purple represents justice, green is for faith, and gold is for power. It seems that the colors were chosen by the king of Mardi Gras in 1872 at the first parade run by the Rex organization. Today, that parade is called the Rex Parade. Okay, cake is decorated, time to bake. Today's vocab is la levure sèche active, dissoudre la levure, rabattre la pâte, Mauve, Vert, or. So my first king cake is done, but the bottom of my king cake is burnt. Unfortunately, I didn't listen to that little voice inside my head. I usually use parchment paper instead of greasing the cookie sheet, and I tend to use cooking spray instead of grease, so maybe that's the culprit. It's really too bad because it looks like it's nicely baked. And look at that, it fits perfectly in the plate I got for it. So let's see how it looks inside. Well, it is nicely baked. Look at that. It smells great. And look at the texture. It's really nice and light and baked through and through. You can taste the orange zest right away. Really nice. And it's lightly sweet, not too sweet, which is really good. It's too bad about the bottom. I'm going to cut it off before serving it. There you go. Mistakes and all. My first, but not my last king cake. It really is quite delicious. I encourage you to make your own. The recipe, steps, and links are in the description below. Until next time, merci et à la prochaine!